Hey guys, Ron here again. With COVID-19 going on, I'm just finding more and more projects to work on the truck. In this video, I swapped the spindles to raise the height of the truck back to stock height.
Okay, so when I bought the truck, it was lowered, and I really wanted standard height or stock height. I changed the springs, or had the springs changed, but you can see here we got a drop spindle, and I wanted to replace that with a stock height spindle. Well, and admitting to my mistake, I just bought a spindle for a 65 Chevy C10, and lo and behold, the ball joints didn't fit. So couldn't be done. Went back and researched what the heck do we got here, and they come to find out that it's very common when putting on disc brakes to also change the ball points to newer ball joints. And there's two options: either 71, 72 years ball joints and spindle, or 73 through 87. So what do I have? So basically I bought some the cheapest parts I could find, just one of each. And by comparing the outer tie rod here, I was able to determine that this spindle is actually for the 73 and 87. Here you can see the thread size on the left, which is a 71 to 72 outer tie rod, and is smaller than the threads on the 73 through 87 tie rod end. And that's how I was able to determine that the spindle must be 73 through 87. The bottom ball joint does not change from 71 all the way through 87. Now, the interesting thing is, if you look at the ball joint on top, it's not a good fit. The cotter pin hole is below the slots in the castle nut. So it turns out that that ball joint is for 71 through 72. All right, so here's the new 73 through 87 spindle stock height that I want to use, and you can see with the 71 through 72 ball joint, it looks exactly like the one that's on the car, where the cotter pin hole is below the slots in the castle nut. And with the 73 through 87 ball joint, the cotter pin hole lines up perfectly with the slot in the castle nut, which of course you'd expect because this is a 73 through 87 spindle. Okay, we started on the driver's side. We jacked up the car. We got on a jack stand safe. We got the other side on a jack stand getting ready. Wheel is off. We took the disc brakes off, and we got them hanging from the frame with tie wire so we don't stretch the brake hose. And next we'll take the rotor off. All right, well, we got the rotor and the dust cover off. So to loosen the outer tie rod end, try something a little different. I put the castle nut on backwards to protect the threads at the bottom, and then just banged away with my mini sledge, and eventually broke loose. And there it is, free. We had to loosen up the ball joints to remove the spindle, and don't mind telling you, it was a bit of a struggle. Took a big hammer to pop those puppies loose. We did support the bottom of the bottom control arm while we're doing that, so the spring wouldn't just let go. Since then, we've let it hang, slowly lowering it with a hydraulic jack. So I was hoping to use the new 73 through 87 ball joint
and have everything there 73 through 87. But what I found when I compared the two is the cage that holds the ball joint for the 71 to 72 is a little smaller than the 73 to 87 ball joint. So I wasn't sure that I'd be able to fit the 73 to 87 ball joint in the control arm because I was afraid the hole that this cage slips through might not be big enough.
Well, it turns out the hole is big enough to accommodate the ball joint for 73 to 87, so we're going to have the right ball joint in there.
All right, so our little bolts, 4 bolts that held on the upper ball joints, 14 to 19 foot-pounds, which is kind of low, and my little torque wrench for that lower range is in inch-pounds, so it's 168 to 228 inch-pounds. All right, so we have the new spindle in place, resting on the lower ball joint and lower control arm. The upper is just starting in a hole, but in order to get the threads to poke through, we'll jack up the lower control arm until we can get some threads to start the nut. Okay, so we got a new dust cover on the lower ball joint, the new 73 to 87 ball joint on top. The upper ball joint has a 1/2 inch diameter thread, so we'll use a torque wrench to go up to 55 foot-pounds and then continue on to get the cotter pin hole lined up. The lower ball joint has 5/8 inch diameter threads, and so we'll go to 75 foot-pounds, and again just continue on to line up the cotter pin hole. The outer tie rods are 9/16, so we'll go to 60 pounds in foot-pounds, and then continue on to line up the cotter pin. Okay, you can see we've got the rotors back on. We repacked inner and outer wheel bearings. We put the disc brakes back on, the calipers. We lubed the tie rod ends, the lower ball joint and the upper ball joint. I really need it for the upper because that's brand new. It comes with a little bit of a grease, but you definitely want to get some more lube in there. Okay, here you can see the difference between what was in there before, the 71 to 72 ball joint on the right, and the 73 to 87 ball joint, which fits the spindle more appropriately, on the left. One thing you can see is that the distance between the top of the spindle and the control arm, basically the bottom of that ball joint flange, is quite a bit different between the two, and that changed the geometry enough that my toe-in after the installation was about 10 to 15 degrees. It was undrivable, so we had to make a basically rough adjustment or alignment here in the garage just to be able to drive it to the alignment shop. So here you can see the amount of adjustment that we had to make just to get the tires near zero toe-in. Keep in mind you got the same adjustment on the inner and the outer and on both sides, so the total distance that was moved is 4 times what you see here. So in the end, the project was a success. We got the truck back up to stock height and everything is working well, and it's very drivable. We are getting a professional alignment as soon as possible, and the appointment is set up.